Coach PJ here. I ran across this video on how to hire your first employee, and I thought, take a look at it, see what they have to say, see if any of the advice is any good. Recruiting is hard these days. There's a lot going on. It's a employees market, so employers have to be even more creative and more conscientious as to how they hire, how they retain, how they train, how they compensate, how they hold their team to a higher standard and still keep the employees happy and keep them engaged. So let's take a look at what this guy has to say and let's see if he has anything to offer.
So there comes a point in every business where we physically cannot manage everything ourselves anymore. We need to hire somebody to either fulfill our service, to send out our products, to manage our sales process, whatever that may be within your business, depending on what you're actually doing. There comes a point where you physically cannot do things yourself anymore. And so we need to identify that need within the business. But a crucial mistake I see many business owners make is they hire too early before there is actually a need to hire somebody. They hire based on laziness or based on their lack of desire to be working themselves. Okay, they try and pacify their business before they are actually in a position where the revenue can sustain that kind of a model. And so you need to assess before you even think about hiring within your business, is there a hiring need? Where am I feeling pain within my company right now? And if I hire somebody, will it fill that pain? Will it fill that void and help me to proceed on scaling this business to new heights? For example,
I'm going to stop there. I totally disagree with what he's saying. I don't think too many people hire too early. I think too many entrepreneurs and new business owners hire too late. I think they end up with a situation where they're doing so much and they're getting burnt out before they hire. Because when you hire, you create leverage. And when you create leverage and you have someone else doing tasks that you do not need to do, especially your very first employee, then you can continue to sell. And you're not as focused on the delivery side. You're focused on the growth and the building and the selling and the clients. And you have somebody else who can help pick up the loose ends, really help you become a fine-oiled machine. But if you wait too long, you end up not having the bandwidth to do whether it's any training, any growth. You end up in a situation where you no longer have time, which I think is, bunk, to hire. So I completely disagree with it. Let's see what else he has to say.
In my social media marketing agency, the Affluent Agency, there came a point where I was outreaching so many businesses and signing up so many new clients that I could no longer physically fulfill the service myself whilst maintaining our sales process. And so my sales started taking a hit, and therefore I was in a dangerous position where my pipeline wasn't remaining full. So I needed to hire somebody who could actually begin to fulfill elements of my service that were time consuming for me. I felt the pain and then I filled it with a Band-Aid, okay? Step number 2, writing the job description. So we've established that there is a position that we need to fill. Let's say we're an ads agency and we need to hire somebody who can fulfill our ad service for us. Well, we need to write that job description. Well, the first thing we need to do is actually assess what we are doing whilst we are fulfilling that role ourselves. What is it that we are doing on the day-to-day to actually fulfill whatever role it is we are hiring for? So spend the day almost mirroring yourself, and as you are working, write down all of the things you are actually doing. Write down all of the tasks you are fulfilling and try and get an idea of the time it is taking you to actually fulfill them as well. Now, I'd recommend using a tool like Time Doctor, which is a time tracking tool, which will enable you to actually manually input when you are working on different tasks throughout your day. And in doing that, you will very quickly get an idea of what the role you are hiring for actually entails and how long it should typically take somebody to fulfill that role. Because it's all well and good hiring a new person and telling them, hey, you need to do this, you need to do that, you need to send emails, you need to run some ads. But actually, you don't know whether that person's going to be working at their full capacity if you don't assess what your capacity is through you fulfilling the role yourself.
So he made 2 points that the Time Doctor thing, the automated tool to track your time. way too complicated. I disagree. Just use a pen and paper, use a notebook, use a sheet. Just start writing things down as to what you're doing and what you're working on and things that you do not need to be doing yourself. Second thing he mentioned is that it's all about you as the first time hiring a person, all about the tasks you're doing. Sometimes it's about the tasks you're not doing and your business could benefit from. So let's say, for example, you're not doing social media and you need someone to do social media. So hiring for that effort is an important element. It doesn't mean you have to have all the things that you're currently doing. I agree with him on the standpoint that you need to understand the effort required for any task so that you have a good gauge of what good looks like and what it takes to fulfill that task, that you're not unrealistic expectations, either high or low, on the ability for someone else to do the task. That is important, but it doesn't mean that it's only the current tasks you're doing as well. So little difference of opinion there. Don't bother with the technology, just get something documented. I find people go down and get involved in the technology and they spend so much time learning the technology that they forgot why they started to use it in the first place. So keep it simple. He talks about job description. My suggestion is also, once you have some tasks, go out to job sites and look for jobs that are very similar to yours and continue to cull the information from those and use that as some of your market research on other jobs that are similar to the job you're trying to advertise for. Let's keep watching.
Document that entire process, and then when you write the description, the task list is way more accurate. Now, it's also very important when we're writing a job description that we include elements of our company culture. Let the applicant know exactly who we are looking for. Now, for me, it is very important, and I'll come on to this later on, that we at the Affluent Agency hire based on personality and not based on skill. Skills can be taught, personality cannot. People who work with us need to be a solid culture fit. We make it clear that we're only looking for people that are self-motivated, that are disciplined, that are driven. And these are all things you want to include in your job description. So when your potential applicants are actually looking at that description, they can mentally ticking through whether they are the correct person and whether or not they should actually apply. Okay, so step number.
Okay, one thing he says that's it's kind of contradictory. He talks about the job description and then why you hire for attitude and fit, cultural fit versus skill. Totally agree with him on that, but be careful. There's two things. There's advertising for the job, and then there's the job description. Those are two distinct pieces of information. The advertisement is different, and it looks like we're going to get into that in a minute. The job description is the details of what you actually want them to do. So make sure you understand they are two different things. Let's watch and see where he takes this.
Number 3, advertise the position. Now, there are a number of different ways, a number of different resources that you can use to actually put out a job application. I personally use a website called Typeform to create a very simple application form, and I then post it across our personal brand, and I will also share that on LinkedIn. Okay. Now, you could do the exact same thing, create an application if you have a bit of an organic following. Or as an alternative, you could use a job hunting website in your local area, or you could even use LinkedIn. Now, LinkedIn is, of course, a business-based social media platform, but it has an incredible hiring system built within it. I've used it many times myself and had a lot of success. You simply put your job description, your title, and how much you're willing to subsidize someone, and you can run ads on that job post. So LinkedIn will distribute it as an ad. That's what I would recommend you doing, and putting a budget of around £5 to £10 per day. Over the course of a week, you're going to get a lot of applications to whatever role you are advertising for. Cool. Step 4.
Okay, I disagree with his approach. He's talking about creating your own type form, creating your own opportunity, doing it organically. If you are hiring your very first employee, you probably don't have all that infrastructure. I would use the boards that exist. And what I would do first is treat yourself like someone who would be looking for that job. And if you're in an industry where you're a medical industry, if you're in a more of a trade industry, there are boards that are very specific to your industries or ways in which they're advertised, ways in which you hire for those, I would make sure that you're looking in places that have other jobs that have a similar, they attract similar people. So don't necessarily go to LinkedIn if you're looking for caregivers, if you're looking for folks who are not necessarily business professionals, but you're looking for someone in the office that doesn't have to have a college education, but needs to be a runner for your business. That's different. You're not going to find them on LinkedIn. You're going to find them in multiple different areas, whether it's Indeed, whether it's ZipRecruiter, whether it's Craigslist. You are going to find them elsewhere. So I always look at what's the position you're hiring and where do people who are looking for that position go to find a job. That's where you should be doing the research, not necessarily one size fits all based on the fact that you're hiring. So let's keep watching.
Actually reviewing those applications. So we're getting some applications coming through. We're trying to decipher who is it we're looking for, okay? How can we actually find the correct kind of person? Well, the first thing that we do when we are reviewing new applications for a new role, let's say we've got hundreds of applications, we will go through and we will delete all of the lazy ones. Anyone with one-word answers or somebody that hasn't even put in the effort to fill in the entire form, we will get rid of straight away. We won't even bother reviewing the application. Because if you're applying for a new role, this is the time where you should be investing the effort. And if you cannot even make the effort when applying for a new job, that's a reflection of your character. What kind of effort are you going to put in if you actually get the job? It's just not even worth considering. Now, a quick bonus for you, something that you should put in your actual application job post. A question that we always ask is, why do you think you're a good fit for Affluent.co or your company name? Why do you think you're a good fit for our company? Now, this is a great question for you to add to your application, which is going to give you pretty much all the information you need as to whether or not this person is going to be a good culture fit or not before you actually speak to them. And this is also a great way for you to be able to review your applications very quickly, because lazy people will fill in that question very lazily, and you can just delete them and move on to the people that have actually filled it in with at least a couple of sentences or a couple of paragraphs as to why they think they are a good fit. So make sure you add that question in your job application. Okay, so moving.
Okay, so one thing he says, he continues to say, delete them, delete them, delete them. I'm of the belief, and he didn't say this, he might have implied it, but make sure you are also being kind to these folks, whether it's an automated email, whether it's a standard email that says, thank you for applying, you're not a fit at this time, something kind, especially if you're in a consumer-based business, because you do not know if they will eventually be a consumer of yours, even if they're not an employee. A great example is a roofing company. You may need a roof someday. You may have applied for a company, and if they treated you poorly, you're unlikely to go to them in the future for services. And that's true for any consumer-based business that's in your area. If people are applying, make sure you have a reputation of getting back to people, have a reputation of being clear and kind, so that it doesn't tarnish your reputation. So I put that out there because it's not just about delete, delete, delete. It is about making sure you know there's a person on the other end, even if it's not, they're not filling out the paperwork fully, even if it's kind of low key, just them pushing a button and applying. I do agree with his question, and it is the exact question that I have folks ask, is why are you interested in this position and why are you a fit? Really, really helpful. Gives you a great early screening criteria to be able to guide people against, and saying if they bothered to fill it out, if they worked it. I actually add two other questions to it. One is, what are 3 of your strengths and 3 of your development areas, or 3 of your weaknesses, just to see if they follow instructions. Can they write 3 and 3? Do they ramble? Do they just write 1 or 2? Do they even engage with that? So those are a couple of questions. And then I might ask one that's more directly related to the job, like what is your field experience, or what is your experience with in this industry? Something pretty broad that relates directly to the industry that's important to you. Let's keep watching.
Moving on, step number 5 is the initial screening process. So I've got some applications through. Okay, we've deleted all of the poor ones. We're starting to look at them. Some of them are going to be calling out to us. Follow your gut leads. You're going to be looking through these applications. Some people will just call out to you. We want to go through an initial screening process. Okay, so we want to look through those applications more rigorously and start assessing their experience and start assessing whether or not we deem them to be a good culture fit based on how they have actually filled in our application. Because what we're going to try and do here is we're going to actually build together a list of maybe 5 or 10 applicants, depending on how many people have applied for your role and depending on how large this role and how integral this role is to your company. But we aim for between 5 and 10 applicants that you are going to take through a screening process, people that you are going to choose as your shortlist, okay? And these are people that you're going to consider for an interview, okay? So you want to be really rigorous with the way you are analyzing their application and their past experience and their CV, okay, to assess whether or not they would be a good fit for your company. Because we do not want to be interviewing 10, 20, 30 different people. Ideally, we want to be interviewing 5 strong candidates for any role that we are hiring for. If you are struggling here and you've got a lot of people that you're kind of umming and ahhing between, you could even send out a question to all of your top applications. A question that I like to ask sometimes when I'm stuck on hiring is, what are your goals for the future? Okay, and you can really assess from someone whether or not they're going to be a good culture fit for you based on that question, and whether or not they're just looking to jump onto your job and move on to the next and build up their career, or whether they actually have the passion and determination to stay within your company and build through your startup. Okay, so great question to ask. Try and get down to 5 people for an interview. The next step, of course, number 6, is the main interview itself. Now, what we don't have time for today is to go through our entire interview process. That's something we could reserve for a future video, and if you're interested, that's included in our agency training program, the Affluent Academy. There's a link in the description. But one thing that is very, very important for any interview is that we have a diversity across questions, and we are asking tactical questions. And as business owners, we are very prepared, okay, for this interview itself. We want to leave that interview having all of the tools we need, having all of the questions answered that we need to have answered to tell us whether or not that person is going to be a good fit for our role. Okay. Now, I like to segment this out into 3 different areas. Okay. Right at the start of the interview, I like to have a bit of small talk. Okay. I want to get an idea of the kind of rapport I can build with this person. I want to really establish, do I see myself getting along with this person? I like to build a friendship with all of the people that we work with, okay? Because I think that builds a nice culture within your company. And so I want to establish, this is the kind of person I could go and have a beer with. This is the kind of person that I can see myself chatting to on the weekend outside of work-based stuff. So we're going to build a bit of rapport. And the second round of questions are skill-based questions. We want to establish whether or not they actually can fulfill the role that we're asking them to fulfill. So we're going to ask them on their previous experience. We're going to ask them about their strengths and their weaknesses, and we're just really going to establish whether or not they can actually fulfill the role they're applying for. And number 3, this is going to be culture-based questions. We want to ask them about their goals for the future. We want to ask them about where they see themselves in 5 years. We're going to ask them what they're passionate about, what actually makes them click. We're trying to establish here, are they a good culture fit? Do they align with our goals as a business? Okay, are they going to stay with us for a number of years? Can they be nurtured and can they grow with us as a company and become an asset rather than somebody that's just going to join us, learn from us, and leave us in the future? So that is the main interview. You want to aim for your interviews to be a maximum of 15, 20 minutes. Really don't drag these out. You can always have 2-stage interviews if this is quite a complex role. I prefer to keep it a 1-stage interview and then assess the applications from there, because I do believe that you really can get a good feel for someone based on one meeting. And you've got to also remember that this person is going to be on their best behavior when they're on this call. Okay, they're going to be on their top form, or at least they should be. Some people will be nervous, of course, and you'll be able to create leniencies for people who are extra nervous in that position. But the majority of people are going to be playing their A game, okay? They're going to become prepared. At least they should do. Everybody who's applying for a role needs to come prepared. They don't know about your company. When you ask them, okay, what do you know about us and what we do? If they really are kind of fumbling for an answer, big red flag, absolute no-go, okay? So just ensure they're prepared by asking tactical questions. That's the main interview. Now, the majority of you are going to be hosting these interviews via Zoom. I would always recommend doing a Zoom interview. If you have a physical office, you can have that person physically visit you. But I like Zoom because we can record Zoom calls very, very easily. And when we record Zoom calls, we can watch them back, we can assess them, and we can write notes on them. Okay, and then we can dwell, and it makes our decision-making process a lot easier because we can look at these situations subjectively. okay? Because when we're in a position we're actually speaking to someone, it's very easy to have the situation manipulated by our emotions in the present. And having a recording enables us to be able to take a step back and revisit that interview at a later date with a fresher mind, okay? And we can write notes based on our findings on watching that back. That's the main interview. Steps.
Okay, you covered a lot in the interview. Some I agree with, some I disagree with. I am a big fan of a little bit longer interviews. 15 minutes doesn't seem nearly enough to get the nerves out, to get them comfortable, to really start to see them let down their guard and see who they really are. Not all interviewees are extroverts, so you have to, and some really, really good workers are more introverted or more reserved. So giving them a little bit more time does help. I'm a big fan of a couple of assessments that you use to help gauge, as well as some kind of information gathering that helps us understand, okay, where are they at? What are they doing? How is their written skills? What is their personality profile? How do they respond? How do they have some judgment questions so that you understand how do they make judgment, especially if that's a part of the job. So I'm a big fan of that stuff because it really gives a holistic picture and a fair balance to those who are more outgoing versus those that are reserved. It puts them on even playing field. He talked about cultural fit, which I can't agree with more. How he does it, I don't agree with necessarily, because not all cultures are directly related to what he mentioned. Some cultures are that of how you take care of people, how you do customer service, how you care, how you handle that. So asking questions that are aligned to your culture is what's most important, not whether or not they're going to overachieve, whether they're going to whether they're goal oriented, things like that. Not every position is that. So you have to recognize, especially because he's talking about your first employee in the business, which generally tends to be someone who, a lot of times it's an administrative person who their goals may not be very grand, but they want to help people. They want to support people. So talking to them about cultural fit is important, but how you do it, I differ with him a little bit. Let's keep watching.
7 is the decision. So at this stage, you will already have a good idea of all the things you need to consider when deciding whether or not someone is a good fit for you. But I want to highlight in this section that for some businesses and for some job roles, you will want to do background checks at this stage in case we want to actually make sure that the person that we're speaking to is who they actually are. And of course, we want to do some referencing. So if you have a highly skilled based job or a highly skilled based role that you are hiring for, then you might want to speak to one of their previous employers to get a reference to, again, validate they are who they say they are and they can do what they say they can do. Cool, that's point number 7. Number 8 is trial/onboarding. Now, in our business, the Affluent Agency, we always like to make sure we hire somebody based on a probational period. We're always trying to give someone a trial task as well. For example, if it's a graphic designer, I would like to give them a few designs to create for us, first of all, to actually test that they actually are able and they have a good skill level. Okay, now, I would always recommend you doing such if your role allows you to do so, because just because someone says they can do something doesn't actually mean they can do it. So launch some kind of a trial task to your maybe top 3 applicants, and then you can pick someone based on whoever's best. Apart from that, we obviously need to onboard the employee. So we need to create our contract. Okay, there are loads of different websites online where you can create employment contracts. I like to use lawdepot.com, .com, the link in the description so you can check that out. And then you'll also want to host a team meeting to introduce this new team member to your team, get their email account set up, get them on your communication tool. If you're a virtual company, we like to use Slack. Of course, if you're in an office, just give them somewhere to sit and a desk. Cool. So that is pretty much is onboarding. The onboarding process is...
I'm going to stop there for a minute. He talks about trial period, and I absolutely agree with that. And that's part of what I was talking about in the interview, is to give them a task, write a thank you note, write a letter, have them do something that's a judgment-based decision, validate their skill set, and don't just trust their skill set. But if folks are leaving a job to come to your job, you can't just have them do a long trial period. You have to do the reference checking. You have to check through the background and just ask really specific questions to make sure that you understand their skill level and you have a knowledge of that. The onboarding, absolutely get them onboarded, make sure that you treat them well and get them excited, because this is the earliest time. One of the mistakes people make when they onboard is they give them all the pent up, I'll call it garbage work that needs to get done. And that's not very exciting. So in the first couple of weeks, you want to give them something that has some meat to it. And you also want to give them something that validates all the things you saw in the interview and make sure you have a good hire, because you don't want to learn that 2 months, 3 months into the hire. You want to learn that really, really quickly to validate everything you saw in the interview and everything you suspected. So don't delay to give them some meaningful work really early on. Let's finish this one out.
Something that it's very hard for me to go through right now because that differs so much from business to business. But in essence, you just need to give that person access to absolutely all of the necessary assets and, of course, take them through your training process. Step number 9 is the actual full-time offer. So once we've taken someone through a probational period, they've worked with us, okay, they've managed some of our clients, they've fulfilled services for us, we know they are a good fit, then we're going to offer them a full-time secure position within our business. Now, finally, we have step number 10. Now, this is actually probably one of the most important steps in this entire system, and that is documenting your lessons and documenting your findings. Because as a new start business owner, we don't get taught about hiring and recruitment in school or in college. Okay, maybe you've got a degree in business, but I certainly didn't learn about that. So when I hired someone for the first time, I made a lot of mistakes, and I knew instantly there were things that I needed to change, questions I wish I asked in the interview. Trial periods I didn't have at the start, okay, and I wish I did that. Okay? Probational periods, new contracts. There are all these things and all these mistakes you make when you're first starting out. So it's very important you actually document those lessons as you are progressing through your hiring process. So every single time you hire a new person, that process becomes more and more solid. So make sure you document the entire process so you can improve your hiring system over time. And then eventually, when you delegate the responsibility of hiring to somebody else in your team, you will already have a bespoke hiring process for your company built around your skill set, built around your culture. Sweet. That's it, guys.
So good points. The onboarding, the job offer, the contract, that'll vary based on the type of work it is. But the job offer is really important. And I always include in the job offer a real clear view of the total compensation. So if there's cell phone reimbursement, if there's mileage, if there's a car allowance, any insurance, any paid time off, all of that is in there so that it is a very clear picture when the candidate is potentially evaluating more than one job offer. You don't want to assume some of that and lose the opportunity to communicate it and to get them excited about it. So if you like this video, you like what I've done here, comment, like below. Otherwise, subscribe to this channel. And until next time, your business profit.